Mug's not even shaking.
Well, because you have no fear. Hi, folks. I'm Dave.
And I'm Sean.
And you're on Barstools and Bandtalk.
The complete music bucket list. Wow. This is unreal. This has been almost 4 weeks since we've done this.
Yep.
Hard to believe that after probably almost 70 plus interviews, about that many, close to that?
Over 120, actually.
Okay, well, there you go. So my math sucks. And all kinds of live hits. All kinds of cards and letters saying, where's Sean? Where's Sean? Anyway, that's just a joke. But anyway. Yeah. Oh, Dave's on again by himself. Oh, anyway, we're back doing this. We got a great guest. But before we do, we've got some stuff we gotta get out there. We brought Monty's on as a full-fledged partner. Very excited about that. So people have been asking what they're up to. You're going to find out. We got another new person that we're talking to. Dave, you posted a picture there, was it last week or the week before, that got over 1,200 hits?
Of Kenny's Pizza. Because it was
Kenny's Pizza's coming onto the show.
And I'm a down air connoisseur, and that was really, really good. It's just a meat the whole way through.
Well, you'll like it because my buddy John Mackley that owns Kenny's in Cole Harbour gave me the background of their down there, and we're going to talk about that really soon. So we're really excited about that.
And we're going to get free shit. Love it.
Are we? You never know.
Oh, okay. I want two more sponsors. This is one. I'm a big fan of Toffee Faye, and I'm kind of a big fan of Crown Royal. So those are the two sponsors I'm going to be working on personally. And anyone else who wants to come on board?
Well, we have Molson, which is my favorite, so I'm excited about that.
Yep.
Finally, you're going to get sick of this, and you're going to hear about it until the stinking thing sells out. December 5th, Barstools and Bandtalk. Dave's going to be there hosting it for us, The Frequency, at Monty's. It's going to be fun. We've got Kyle Boudreau, Ryan Boudreau, YouTube darling. We've got Jordan Allen, Leith Fleming Smith. Come on.
And this fella.
And yours truly. All for a low price of $10. Tickets are going fast. I don't want to do the Ron Keel Mauricio coin thing, but tickets are going fast. So get in there, Nancy at Monty's.ca. And you know what? Like Dave's Baby Shark thing, you're going to stop hearing about it when all the tickets are gone. So Dave's little old clock on the wall there. Hopefully we can get that done soon.
Mm-hmm. So the gentleman we're going to bring on here tonight, though, quite honestly, because you're going to hear a lot about this Monty's event for sure. It's Barstool's live event number 2 at 245 Waverly Road in Dartmouth. Monty's show bar, but it really is all about you. So this gentleman we're going to bring on here, it's been in the makings for a long time, and quite honestly, he is a living legend in maritime rock history, and he's played with so many people in so many different provinces right around the country. I'm just going to bring him on, Sean, because he's been waiting for a long time. He's a great guy. Carson Richards. He's just an amazing musician and a good friend of the show. There he is in living color as Carson Richards.
Look at that handsome bugger, boy.
Have I ever got you fooled?
Well, I don't wear glasses, so I don't fool easy either. And we're really excited to have you on because your name has been flying across our desk, if you will, for the last probably 4.5, 5 weeks.
Yep.
Everybody that we've talked to says it's either, hey, dummies, where the hell is Carson Richards? Or you got to get Carson on there. So it's like, our apologies. We finally made it happen. We're really excited about this.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're going to climb up now. Gosh, Carson, you're a big chatterbox earlier now.
We'll get him going.
All right, fair enough. Now, probably if you make your way into Dartmouth, we'll get you one of these mugs too, Carson. Just saying. You can have your very own Barstools mug. Drink whatever beverage you want out of it. I can tell you what my preference is, but you can just do it on your own. So,
speaking of which, I need to have a little sip here, okay?
Give it.
Absolutely.
That's my boy. See,
what's he got?
Wine, gin and tonic, and Jameson's.
Nice right there.
Yeah, so I have been watching a number of the interviews that you fellows have put out, and I've really enjoyed them. I actually think that Dave reached out to me way back in the beginning.
I did.
we're just starting all of this, and I wasn't able to do it back then. I am very happy to be doing it now. Thank you for the invite.
And we're happy to have you here. And you know what? We don't keep a yardstick of who comes on when. We're just happy when they do. So we're happy as heck for you to be on here.
Speaking of way back when, let's start at the beginning, Carson. So you're originally from where? Are you originally from Nova Scotia?
Originally from Nova Scotia, yeah. My family's from Cape Breton, but I was born in Halifax. I always thought I was born in Cape Breton and then moved here, but no, I was born in Halifax. Grew up down in the South End, first 10 years of my life on Bishop Street.
Okay.
And then moved to Tobin Street and left to join the wide world from there.
Well, before we went on, Sean, he was telling me a little story that I did not know this about Carson Richards, but he was a keyboard player originally first, classically trained keyboard player up until you were 16, he said, and got involved with playing with bands through the St. Mary's Basilica.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good Catholic boy like us, look.
Well, he's probably way better. I don't know how it went for you back then, but when Dave and I were doing that whole thing, the goal was to get to grade 9 so that you didn't have to go to catechism anymore, right? You got confirmed and then you were good. So anyway, my Catholic grandmother would be rolling over in her plot right now if she heard me say that. But anyway.
Oh yes, and they hate it when you get out.
Yes, sir. So you started off in keyboards. I mean, that being, I guess, a church thing, because, I mean, a lot of people don't realize Catholic churches actually can be pretty musical, depending upon where you go. I mean, you have everything cut from kind of, the organ and, the choirs to darn near close to, gospel and evangelical type things, depending upon where you're at. So how long did you do the keyboards?
I started taking lessons when I was just about 7. I went to the grade 8 in classical music. Last going off, I was playing Bach's fugues. I was there when they put the 3-manual Cassavan Brothers pipe organ in St. Mary's. I watched them put 3 pipe. I played for funeral services and weddings and a few of the low masses while I was there.
So you played that organ? You played that organ at St. Mary's?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is a monster. 102,000 different sounds with the combinations of stops.
That's unreal.
Beautiful thing. Beautiful thing.
Yeah. And the sound in that room, too, is incredible.
Yeah. While I was there, as I was telling Dave earlier, put a little 3-piece band together, just myself and a guitar player, Herman Giroir was his name, and a singer. And we used to play at our CYOs, the Catholic Youth Organization. We invited another youth organization to come to the church for one of our dances. They enjoyed the music we were playing, so they invited us to their church. At my church, I was playing the piano, banging out the bass on the left hand and whatever top hand. And when we got to their church, they had no piano. So what am I going to do? And somebody from the crowd said that they had a bass. And I said, well, go get it. They brought it over, and it was a Harmony bass. I think they were one of the very first electric bass guitar makers. And I said, show me how this thing works. And he showed me, and I never went back. I figured out I can stand up and play this, and I can move around while I'm playing this. So that did it for me. I was hooked.
So I have a theory about I've myself and a couple of people have said if you learn how to play piano, you can pretty much transfer that to any instrument because of Bob and drummer. So you have the independence. So keyboards, you're using both hands doing different things with the foot pedals. Guitar, you're really transposing what's on the keyboard on the strings. Bass, the same thing. Do you feel that it was a smooth transition when you did that? Maybe because of that?
Oh, very smooth. As I say, this bass was put in my hands. I had never seen one before, let alone played one. He explained to me about the first, third, and fifth, and root, and so on. And because of my musical theory from piano, by the end of the night, I wouldn't say I was competent, but I would say that I was getting a good feel for it.
Right.
Yes, most definitely. As far as I'm concerned, any time that you begin in your career taking music theory. You can transfer that to any instrument.
Yeah.
Different ways of playing them, of course, but if you know the theory, it's much easier to pick up on what you have to do.
So there you go. So Dave Carson just explained our challenges in about 30 seconds right there. Eh? Thank
Well,
you.
it's true, but you nailed it right there, because I mean, piano is a percussion instrument. If you think about it, you're hitting a key that's hitting the hammer that's hitting the tone. So it kind of makes sense that you can move from. And you said you had a little stint on drums too. Is that right?
Yeah, a little stint, probably only about 6 or 7 months. I didn't really get into it at all. I did play them once on CBC television, but
Is that right?
that was it. High school band.
Right. So, I mean, but to Sean's point, you're right. I mean, like once you had that theory down, I think on whatever instrument it is, to move it around. But all the stuff that you did after that, I was kind of surprised. You and I had this conversation off camera that you don't. You probably still could, obviously, but you don't sight read anymore. You're just everything's by ear.
Yes, probably 95% of what I've done in the last 60 years that I've been playing bass
60.
has been 60. Yeah, I'm 73. Started when I was 13. But yes, most of it has been all of it except for one stint in an orchestra in Ontario where I had to sight read. It's all been by ear.
He's
I'm
already
glad you said.
He's already agreed
No.
to get free bass lessons too, by the way, Sean. Free bass lessons. I've already heard.
Right on. Sign it. Make sure you make that connection tonight before we end. But so in terms of a piano player, I mean, obviously you're playing the church. It's one thing, but was there any type of style that you would have kind of, said you were like? Where some guys are, I'm a blues guy, or I'm a boogie woogie guy, or I'm a rock guy, or like in terms, or were you just a piano player that kind of hybrided into wherever you needed to go?
Well, actually, as I said, when I picked up the bass at 13, I never went back to playing keyboards in a band. I did continue on until I was 16, taking lessons, and did the grade 8 music theory thing. But I never really went back to playing it except for one short stint, probably 1965. Yeah, it would have been 1965. I played with a band called the Twilights here in town. We used to play at the Olympic Gardens 3 nights a week. But that was it. And basically, I haven't touched it for that long.
Okay, so you're playing bass at 13. This is pre-Beatles, and this is probably, well, I shouldn't say pre-Beatles, but you're 1962, 63, maybe?
Yeah, no, it was pre-Beatles. We were doing Buddy Holly and Sam Cooke and all the old style, just the early rockers that were coming up. That's what we were into. Now, this little 3-piece transformed into a 5-piece band that was called the Mustangs.
Okay.
And just after it, we went to the 5-piece thing. We started to get a lot of work. And about that time, the Beatles started coming out. And that band was myself, Herman Giroux on guitar, Nicky Katsos on drums, Bobby Quinn on keyboard, and oh my goodness, what was his name, the singer? Oh, I have forgotten. I'm getting bad with names. I lose them. But anyway, that transformed into a 5-piece, and I'd have to say that we were one of the more popular bands around Halifax at the time. We played the frat houses at Ferdal University. We had a contract with them for 18 months.
Wow.
And we played St. Mary's Boat Club, Wake Waltic, high school dances. I mean, we were busy every weekend.
So you were young, you weren't old enough to get into the clubs at that stage, were you?
At that stage?
Yeah.
No, we weren't playing any bars. The frat houses was a whole different situation.
Wow.
But
So,
go ahead.
No, it's just
well, no. So
it's ironic how busy you could be back then, just in Halifax.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think we only had one gig out of town, and that was down in Chester. I mean, it was amazing. When that band folded, and I went to this other band, the Twilights. That band folded in 65, and I joined the Twilights in 65. With them, I was playing keyboards. Okay. Little old Farfisa. Anyway, I was playing keyboards with them. That getting out of the Mustangs and going into that, where I played that little bit of keyboards.
Right.
And then I was gone.
So there seems to be every time we talk with somebody of of your vintage and the era that you came up in, there seems to be 3 or 4 names that are constants. Bob Quinn's name keeps coming up. Your name keeps coming up. Bruce Wheat. So it's like certain people will say play with this guy, play with this, but it's always the same 5 names. What would you equate that to bands, split up and reform that quickly, or were they people such as yourself that were go-to people that could just, hey, let's call Carson because we know he's going to show up and he's going to do the job right. We don't have to worry about him embarrassing us. What would you attribute that to?
I would say that you're probably right with your latter point. It's the same today. I have never considered myself an A-class musician in this atmosphere. You got guys out there like Bruce Dixon and Jamie Gaddy and Brian Bourne. When you guys got those guys out there, they're always going to be the first people that are called. But back then, when everybody was just starting to get moving, starting to get mobile, we were all basically growing up musically at the same pace.
Right.
So we all knew each other and we knew what each other could do. So if I wanted to be in a band, or if I wanted to form a band, I would call certain people that I knew were of the same level that I was.
Sure.
And other people did the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I've played with them all over the years. I played with Sam in the early 80s. I played with Terry Hattie. I did a weekend with Oakley. Had to learn all of his songs because Zipper had to go away on an emergency trip to Ontario. So I played with all of the really good ones that were there at that time.
So when I bring up your name to somebody, there's 2 words that constantly come to mind.
La 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 la.
No, and I think if you hear them, you're gonna take them as compliments. One is consistent, and the second is prepared. So those are the constants. I never hear a bad word about you, which that's rare. Carson's a great guy, but I always hear consistent and prepared. What do you think about that when I say that to you?
I always hear dancer about Carson Richards. That's what I always hear. Dancer.
I think without going on any kind of an ego trip here, I think I'd have to agree with you. I'll give you one little, for instance, maybe 4 years ago, I'd say, Gordy Thomas and Thomas Mikeson had a band called Atlantic Rhythm Section. And they went through 4 or 5 bass players, only lasted a few months each. Some of them only a few weeks. Gordy called me up and asked me if I'd be interested. And I said, sure, I would. I said, shoot me a half a dozen of the songs. I'll come over and I'll audition. So when I went over, they threw all of these songs at me, one right after the other. And Gordy knew me from before. Thomas Mikeson never knew me. So we did the songs. And at the end of it, Mikeson just looked over at Gordy, and Gordy said, told you he'd come prepared.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I do, Sean. That's what I do. If anybody needs me for any type of gig, I want to know the material. I want to know the songs. And sometimes I'll spend 14, 16 hours a day making sure that I have that material.
Right.
And the other thing that I do, and I'm not putting a knock on any musician that is willing to get up on stage and put themselves out there. But one of the things that I do is I make sure that I understand the concept and the feel of the song. I make sure that the lines that I'm doing, if it's a cover tune, are as close as possible to the lines that are in that song.
Right.
Because that gives it the whole feeling. Because for me, the link between the drums and the vocals is the bass. I'm playing time, but it's also musical. So if I can get those lines right, then the song feels right.
It's interesting because I'm a drummer, and I've been lucky that I've played with the same bass player for a while. But when somebody subs, I always listen for. I'm a huge feel guy, but I'm a big stickler for tempo. If something's too fast, it just sounds crappy. And so, what maybe talk to me a little bit about that, because I know for like anytime I play with the bass player, if it's that'll be Dave will give you he'll back me up on this. If it's too fast, that's the first thing I always say. Song's too fast, we got to go back and slow it down. Yeah. Just talk about that for a little bit, because you got to give the tunes room to breathe.
I'm not quite sure where you're going with that, because drummer sets.
Well, just as a bass player, if you're playing with, say, a drummer, because I mean, to me, bass and drums, if you got a good bass player and a good drummer, the other stuff kind of, and again, I'm a drummer, you're a bass player, but it kind of fills itself in. But if you've got a weak bass player and a weak drummer, or one of each, tempo can be all wonky, feel the tune can be all wonky. Oh, so just talk about, you know what I mean? So if you're playing with maybe a drummer that's off, like what would you do to work with that? Especially if you're sitting there and it's like, okay, well, I got to play for the next 2 hours. What the heck do I do?
Boy, that's a tough one for me, because I don't do a lot of just walking in and playing gigs. Just about everything that I've done has been a band that was put together. And before we hit the stage, those things were worked out.
Right.
Didn't normally get on a stage with someone that I wasn't comfortable with. Now, there are times when you're playing and drummer might speed up a little bit or slow down a little bit. You kind of, like you said, Sean, you kind of walk over and say, hey, we got to drag this back, or, push it up. But as you're talking about bass players and drummers, this is another thing that I've looked for all my life. Well, I shouldn't say all my life. It probably took me about 5 or 6 years of playing bass to realize that this should be happening. I have favorites of drummer bass player combos. Rocco Prestia and Garibaldi, Floyd Sneed and Joe Shermy from Three Dog Night, Alain Caron and Paul Brochu from Uzed. If you listen to these bands and listen just to the bass and drums, they're so locked in together that it sounds like one thing happening.
Right.
Yep.
And that's what I look for. And I'm fortunate at this point in time that I'm playing in the Sponigal band with a drummer by the name of Steve Murphy. And Steve and I hit it off right from the very beginning. And a little quote from Dave Garibaldi, when he was talking about being in Tower of Power with Rocco Prestia. And he said, we don't even talk about what we do. We start playing and we just know what's going to happen. We know where the other guy is going to go, and we go. And I do that now with Steve Murphy. We're doing all original tunes with the Sponigal band, and he'll start playing the field. I'll jump in and try and do the bass lines that Wayne wants to hear, whether it's Southern rock or funk or whatever he wants for that song. And within 2 or 3 times of going through the song, Steve and I are locked in.
Right on.
Even little fills here and there. He hears me do something, the next time we do it, I hear him do something, the next time I'm on it.
Okay, but let me ask you. Go ahead. Sorry, Carson. I didn't interrupt.
No, I'm done. I just said that's the kind of thing I love.
But you and I talked about this a little bit off camera, and Sean and I have talked about this 1,000 times, and we're talking about the circuit today and not 2020. 2020, we know it's horrible. But normally, in this last couple of years, you have to be, if you want to be a working musician, and heaven forbid you're a full-time musician, you have to be in 3 or 4 or 5 or sometimes even 6 different projects to keep working. How can you keep that tight, locked-in feeling with that many different drummers?
Well, it's tight and locked in with Steve. With Michelle, I've just started working with Bruce Murray. Pardon me, sorry, but he's a Dow graduate in percussion, and we're starting to get it together. It's easy enough to do on the cover tunes because you can hear it all.
Sure.
Michelle has some originals, and we've just started basically working on the bed tracks for those. So Bruce and I are starting to come along, but the good thing with Bruce is that he knows what he's doing. At this point in time, as with myself, we're not trying to overplay. We're just trying to capture the feel and see what the other is doing. And then we work off of that and build the song. But Bruce is a metronome. He's a metronome. He just gets a time into his head and he does not vary. As well as Steve Murphy.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. And I mean, the other thing too, for me, as a drummer, there's nothing worse than playing with a bass player that's kind of, I like bass players that lock in. The guys that kind of tend to try to drive the bus and are like a little bit ahead of the beat. And they're, you know what I mean? They're kind of pulling that. To me, I is problematic. It's just my style. It's just to kind of be, locked in. So myself, when I'm playing with somebody, at first I try to, as my grandmother used to say, try to stick 10 pounds of bologna in a 2-pound bag. Try to keep it nice and basic and lock in. And because at the end of the day, you have to get that foundation right, or the whole thing's going to fall apart, just like a house.
Yep. Oh yeah, for sure. I've had a few people compliment me at different times in my life, and it was all muchly appreciated. But 2 compliments that came out of the Maritimes for me was when Bruce Dixon said that I was one of his idols.
Wow.
Because I know he came and saw me play a few times when he was basically starting out. But a few years later, I went back to him and asked him for lessons.
Wow.
Because he had grown exponentially. He just went crazy with it, and he understood it even more than I do. I understand sitting in a pocket. I understand playing the groove. But he can do that along with a whole lot of other things that I'm not capable of. So that was a great compliment. And the last one was not too long before Frank McKay died. We were doing a fundraiser over at Monty's, and we played our set, and I came down, and Frank was standing at the back wall, and I was walking by, and he grabbed me by the arm, and he said, "Way to sit on the groove."
Mm.
I mean, there's nothing better for a bass player, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
If people
Absolutely.
recognize the fact that you're just pounding it out, making it work, sitting in that pocket, playing that groove.
And it's funny because people don't, when they're dancing, they don't, by and large, even realize what the bass player and the drummer are doing. They know they're dancing to it. They know it's moving them, but they don't understand. Like it's. I always kind of view the bass player and the drummer as almost like, if you use football, the quarterback and the running back. They're the ones that kind of push everything forward. And the lead singer is obviously the lead singer. But I just, again, I've gone out and seen bands. Like Dave and I went out and saw a band this past weekend. The drummer wasn't doing anything that I was like, wow, but he had great groove. He had great tempo.
Yes.
What he was playing was tasty. His sound was fantastic.
Yep.
And he wasn't overbearing. He was pretty much, right on. And, it was very enjoyable to listen to. But on the other side, I've been to shows where I'm like, I don't want to be mean, but I can't listen to this because it's just killing me. You know what I mean?
I do.
So, to what you're talking about, Carson, is really, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, because the average person doesn't even realize what they're listening to. They just, it's like Santa Claus coming. It just happens. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Oh, yes, for sure. We're the drums and bass are the engine that drive the bus, but people only ever see the passengers.
Right.
So they don't even know what they're dancing to, but they're watching the singer with stars in their eyes and all the other bullshit. But I mean, it's a sin because and Sean and I talk about this a lot too, because we had the same mentality this way. And it's something that we learned later on. Like we were 80s rock kids. So we were all about getting as many notes as they possibly could and whatever it was. But now you realize that the music is between the notes. That's really what it happens. It's like, it's the rest, it's the feel and just the laid backness, and it's given the dynamics. And I never really picked up on that as a young player, but I sure appreciate it now. I sure appreciate it. So thanks for saying that. We appreciate that.
Oh, well, truth is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You can skirt around it, but you can't change it.
Amen.
Well, that's it. But, and to circle back, for you to go and actually go back to Bruce and ask for lessons, says something to you about you as a person, be a player, because I mean, I can think of a lot of people, maybe even myself, that might not go back to somebody that's, younger and maybe less experienced and say, hey, can you give me a lesson? So, I mean, that's a huge thing right there.
Yeah. Well, it never really evolved into lessons because I was on the road most of the time. He was pretty busy, but I was over at his house a couple of times and we banged out a few things. I learned something from him. So that was great.
Well, and I absolutely love Bruce. I mean, Bruce is just, we had him on the show and he, ton of stories, funny as hell, just, yes, just love listening to him play. He's just awesome. And everybody that brings, but everybody brings up Bruce's name. Again, it's never, Bruce Dixon. It's kind of like Carson Richards. It's like, I'm not used to people liking bass players this much. What's going on?
You're such an arsehole. Jesus.
Oh, I sent them all money, Sean.
Yes, well, money well spent, my friend.
But Bruce was telling me about his technique that he had to do a weekend gig with Sass Jordan. Didn't know the songs, so
Yeah.
he kind of he listened to them once, and then he was on the plane, and he was visioning it, like he was envisioning where the note was going to be, what it was going to sound like, and that's it's a really neat brain that he has, so you can see it before he actually does it. And when I got there, Dave, was no problem. I knew the songs that I had in my head. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool, you know.
Yeah. I kind of do that myself a little bit when I'm listening to music. Obviously, the first thing that pops out to me is the bass line.
Mm-hmm.
And I can envision in my head. I don't have perfect pitch, but I have relative pitch. If you tell me what the first chord in the song is and play that song, I can tell you what the rest of the chords that follow.
Right.
But I have to know that first chord.
Exactly.
So when I hear a song on the radio or play a CD, I envision that it's starting in A, and then I hear all the chords that come after. And by the time that song is over, I pretty much know the chords to the song. If I hear it again, I pretty much have the feel to it.
Yeah. And then fill in the solos after that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that way. I know people that struggle very hard to get that kind of stuff. So
Okay,
I'm a little fortunate.
Let me ask another question though, because now we're talking about learning cover songs, which is, it's not that easy to do. A lot of people think, cover songs are easy. Not when you're doing multiple genres or multiple artists. I mean, that actually is a little harder than writing your own songs. But you did that too, because back in Everyday People, and that's probably, it's fair to say that's your first big band, Everyday People?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
You just did all original stuff in that band. So how did you go about writing your bass lines?
Well, it wasn't all original. We had the album and probably 2 or 3 more tunes. We did do covers. But when I joined the band, they had already been in the studio and had 2 or 3 tracks in the can. The bass player wasn't working out. He left. I think Pam told this story.
Yeah.
So I was driving through Yorkdale, and she was walking through and just jumped in front of the car and stopped me and told Bruce, "There's your bass player right there."
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into it. But my first couple of weeks with that band was a week learning the original tunes and a week in the studio re-recording the bass player stuff. So it started there. But I mean, we did a lot of cover material. We only had basically 1 set of original.
Oh, okay.
And we did a lot of cover, and we could not get hired in Toronto for 1.5 years after that band formed, because we did. How can I put this? What we did, the club owners didn't like. It was a club owner by the name of Roel Bramer, who owned the gasworks, the engine room, and the coal bin, 3 clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept pressing him to play at one of his clubs. And finally he said, "Look, learn these 6 tunes." And he said, "I'll give you a shot. I'll give you a weekend at the gasworks," which at that time was pretty much the most popular club in town.
Sure.
Well, we got the weekend, and then he fired the band for the next 2 weeks and kept us through.
Wow.
Yeah. It was lined up the second night. So
what were the 6 songs?
Some of them were 3 Dog Night. I think one was Crosby, Stills, Nash.
Yeah.
It was all vocal stuff because that's what we did.
You guys were, yeah.
So talk about playing the gasworks there, Carson, because I played the gasworks, but it wasn't the old gasworks. It was when they redid it. And I heard the stories about your feet sticking to the floor and tables kind of bolted together, but it was the legendary place. Talk about playing that bar.
Oh, I'm not sure I'm allowed to.
They're all still alive.
It really was something else. I mean, the club had been around for a while, and I don't think they'd ever cleaned the carpets, and you could smoke in the bars at that time. It was very long and narrow. When you walked in the front door, probably went 200 feet to the back, but it was only about 40 feet wide. Standing on stage, you're looking at about 10 tables, and the rest of them are all out to the side. But the atmosphere was just incredible. I mean,
yeah.
like any club that is the place to go in a town, the atmosphere is always great. And we sucked it up and enjoyed it like crazy.
Right on.
We made one bad mistake, though. The second week we were there, we said, party at our house. And then our rhythm guitar player gave up the address. But by the time we got home, like we had a house on Avenue Road in Toronto.
Yeah.
And by the time we got home, there were 60 people partying. Mistake.
And, you know, and that room too. I mean, again, I played the quote unquote new Gasworks, but you know, as you were describing it, I mean, it's hilarious. You walk in and it's just long, and then, you know, I mean, I'm looking at my wall. It's about 10 feet from me, and I just remember the sound in that room was just like bounce off that back wall and right at you, and it was just like it didn't matter what you did, it was loud.
Question for you. When you played, there was a stage on that wall, like the bar was first coming in and the stage was on the right-hand wall?
The stage was, so if you walked in the front door, they had kind of an island bar at that point, but it was really small, and the stage would have been on the right-hand side against the wall.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Did they still have that 1.5 foot duct above the stage?
Yeah, they did. As a matter of fact, they did, yeah.
Our drummer in Everyday People was 6'5" in his bare feet. He hated behind those drums.
I bet he did, because it wasn't a very big stage to begin with. I mean, you didn't have a lot of real estate there, right?
Yeah. No, there wasn't. There's a lot of those around, though.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
They don't want to give up the seating.
So how long were you up in Ontario for?
Well, after I left the Twilights, actually, I didn't leave I did leave the Twilights, but I left the Twilights because there was a comedy show band that came down from Ontario and played at one of the coffee houses in Halifax. This would have been early 1966. And I went to see them 2 or 3 times. And the last time I was there, I was talking to the bass player, and he said, well, you're a bass player. He said, why don't you try out for this band? Because I'm leaving. So I said, well, yeah. I mean, they were so polished. Suits with ascots, cufflinks, right? Just a polished group. So I said, sure. So about 2 months later, when he was getting ready to leave, they called me. I went over to PEI. It was called the Horse and Sulky Lounge. Really popular place. I went over there and did the audition. And a week later, I found out that I was hired. So I left in 1966. I left them in 1969. I came back here for about 7 or 8 months, in which time I had Bana Fox Blues Band, myself and Joel Zemmel and Bobby Fisher. Mm-hmm. Just a little 3-piece blues band, but we kicked it around pretty good. And then this band, the Marquis, this comedy show band that I had left with, they were back in town, and unfortunately their drummer got killed in a car accident while they were here. So they were reforming, and they got a hold of me and asked me if I wanted to come back, and I said sure. So back out again in 69. Went back up to Ontario, but I didn't stay with them very long. They were getting into some stuff that I wasn't happy about. Mm-hmm. And I kind of left that band, and then I was floating around Toronto and ran into Pam and Bruce, and boom, Everyday People.
You know, it's funny because I don't think that's an accident, though, Carson, because, and Sean and I talked about this 1,000 times before, there's a reason why Maritime musicians stand out in a crowd. It's their work ethic, it's maybe their upbringing, it's their dedication to the craft, or just because they're not a dick. You know what I mean? You know what you're going to get when you're working with a Maritime musician, because they're going to pull up their socks and do what they have to do to get it done.
Yep, I agree. 95%. I run into a couple that I would never work with again, but that's me.
Yeah. None we've had on the show. None we've had on the show yet, though. So,
of course.
I had $3 here somewhere. Let me see.
No. Well, and to that point, do you think maybe as musicians from the Maritimes that we might have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder that, you know, we maybe think that we have to be a little bit better than, you know, the guys that are away, like because maybe we're thought of as, or maybe we think of ourselves as not worthy, even though most of the people that come out of this area that are good are amazing, right?
Yeah.
I think it might be a little of both. I never had a chip on my shoulder, but when I look back at all the experience that I was able to get here, because it's so musical, and at that time it wasn't a cutthroat business. Everybody helped everybody. You learned alongside somebody that you might be vying for a job for. So I never had the chip on the shoulder, I don't think, when I went up there, but I was comfortable with what I knew about music.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that?
Well, just, why is it that you think that, because I mean, most musicians that are from here, the good ones are amazing. They're not mediocre. They're not just okay. I find musicians from the Maritimes are either stellar or not. So, do you maybe think that it's because, we work a little harder because we think we're maybe not as good or we're as the guys from away?
Yeah, to a degree, I do. To a degree, I do. It's so hard to hone in on something like that because I think that's individual for everybody.
Sure.
Right.
You have the way you think and feel about how you've approached your music and what you know about it. And if you're comfortable with what you know, then there's no chip on your shoulder. And I didn't ever feel that I was lesser than to anybody that I ran into up there. Now, I'm talking on my level. I'm not talking about musicians like Doug Riley. Doug played on a couple of the songs. You know who I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
Doug played on a couple of our songs in the Everyday People album. I would never, ever equate myself with someone of that caliber. But for the caliber of musicians that I was involved with in the club scenes that we were playing and the arenas that we were playing, I never felt lesser than.
Right.
Never did.
Well, and you know what? That's amazing because some people would call that ego, and I just think I call it confidence and self-worth.
That's right. You know your own value for sure. It's like I wouldn't say that either. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
That is a fine line between confidence and ego, and depending on who you're in front of, it can be taken either way.
Well, I'll tell you why it's not, because two people that you just mentioned, Frank McKay and Bruce Dixon, went out of their way to tell you how great they thought you were. So that's not ego. That's just someone else recognizing your competence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, yeah, I guess.
I want bass lessons, and I want them. Pick me.
I had a fellow one time, we were playing with Molly. Well, Molly Oliver was the next thing after Everyday People.
Right. We
were playing Bathurst. And there was one song that we played that was 25 minutes long. And it was just a standard song, but because we were playing long nights in clubs, we gave everybody a solo in this one and stretched it to 25 minutes, right? So I'm doing a bass solo in this thing, and it's about 3.5, 4 minutes long. And I'm doing this bass solo. And I thought I played really, really well, and not a thing from the crowd. Next night, I played a solo that I thought I played really badly, and this guy came up to me and he said, "Wow, that's the best bass solo I ever heard." And I was so upset with the way that I had played that solo. I just looked at him. I said, "Are you a bass player?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, fuck off."
Fair enough.
What can I say?
However, gets to the point that oftentimes, I think sometimes we play for the wrong people when we're on stage.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes we do. But I've always had it in my mind. This Carmody show band that I took off with in 1966, the lead guitar player for that band was, he's about 6'4", and probably weighed, $190, was balding. And when he opened his mouth and sang R&B, if you close your eyes, you'd think you were listening to someone right out of Motown.
That's right.
And right off the get-go, him and the girl in the band, Linda, because I was underage at the time. I was only 19 and the drinking age was 21.
That's right, back in Ontario.
They took me under their wing, and they showed me how to be a professional musician on stage. Up till that point in time, I learned songs. I went on stage, I played them. I collected my 25 or 30 bucks a night, which was good money back in the early 60s.
Sure.
But up until then, that's all I did. But they showed me through this band, especially through the comedy part. Like we did about a 45-minute dance set. And then we did about an hour and 15-minute comedy show, musical comedy. And then we did another dance set at the end, and we played Holiday Inns, Ramada Inns all over Canada and the US, because they were the big rooms in town in the 60s. And this band thrived. I mean, they just thrived. They're still going, as a matter of fact. But anyway, those two people taught me what I should be doing to entertain the people that come to see what I'm doing. And I'd never forget them for that. I thanked Steve just not 2 or 3 years ago. Thanked him again profusely for showing me how to be on stage, to try and engage a crowd, to make it look like I'm having fun so that they'll have fun.
Right.
But I shouldn't say try and make it look like I'm having fun. When I get on stage, I'm having fun. Doesn't matter what. You know, there's good nights and bad, but the good nights always put the bad nights out of your mind.
And I'm glad you brought those people up. Dave and I had an opportunity to interview Bill Bootlier a couple months ago. Well, actually, it wasn't that, about 6 weeks ago. Yeah. And Dave and I are sitting there talking to Bill, and I never realized how much Bill influenced me as a player. I mean, he was the first real sound man that I had the opportunity to mix me. And I remember the sound check, don't play heel down. And Bill was coaching me the whole time, and he literally changed the way I played in about 2 nights. Yeah. And, Bill, I remember Bill saying, why the hell are you playing for musicians? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, and it was Bill. I remember this. It was Bill. Why are you playing for musicians? They're not buying beer. They're not paying to get in. Why are you playing for them?
Exactly.
And I was just like, so, there's my dirty little secret, folks. If you're a musician and you come out and you're not impressed, oh, well, because I don't care. I'm playing for the people that, you know what I mean? And I not to sound crass, but that was just such a lesson for me that.
For sure.
For sure. Get it right.
Yeah. I was playing with a little light jazz band here called Mojito. We played at Stainer's a couple of times. Yeah. It didn't last for very long, but I really enjoyed it. Just like jazz, fly me to the moon kind of stuff.
Right on.
And we were playing down at Stainer's one night, and the guitar player did a solo. He had 2 or 3 of his friends in the audience, and he played a solo, and he botched a couple of things in it that he never had done before. So we finished the set, and he was outside talking to his buddies, and I strolled out for a cigarette. I was just walking by, and I heard him say, man, I made some mistakes in that solo I shouldn't have made. And his buddies, who are musicians as well, said, well, nobody noticed but us. And considering that we all make mistakes, we're not telling.
Touche.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Do it once it's a mistake, do it twice it's jazz, right? So if you're playing at a jazz combo, like
yeah, well, I've made the mistakes like everybody else has, and I don't say do it twice it's jazz. I say do it twice and it becomes the new song.
There you go, right?
There you go. All right, you may or may not notice that we took a little break there because I'm old. I'm older than Carson, and I have to pee. So true story. We're talking to Darby Mills, one of our absolute icons and heroes, much like yourself, my hero. But Darby Mills is going a long time, and I have to piss so bad. It's like I think, man, I can't stop Darby Mills from talking because just talking to us, right? So I may have peed a little bit in my pants. I'm not going to say that out loud, but I may have. Just saying. But I won't do it anymore. So.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of information.
Carson, this is the first interview we've done in about 4 weeks, and I'm sorry that you're subjected to that. Let's see. I'll take things I don't need to know for 500, Alex.
All right. Here's what I want to know. What kind of gear are you playing nowadays, and what was your favorite gear back in the day?
Oh, wow. What I'm playing now is a Ibanez SR505.
Okay.
And I also have an Ibanez S375F.
Okay.
Fretless.
Nice.
And I have a PV database amplifier that I bought in 1992.
What do you think of that amp? I had that amp.
I love it.
It was too fucking heavy. It was so heavy.
Oh, it's got a 15-inch Black Widow speaker in it with a magnet that weighs 36 pounds.
Yeah.
How heavy is that, Dave?
Well, I had a heart attack, so fuck you.
Well, now it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm finding it hard to lift mine now too. But point is that I've had that amp since 1992. I probably played 10 different guitars through it. And when I put this Ibanez into it, people were complimenting me all the time on the sound. It's just a match made in heaven for me. Wow. I get everything out of it I want. It's a 450 watt deal, as you know.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And I've never had that thing above 5 in the biggest places I played.
No,
and it just
right.
thumps. That low B string will snap you in the chest like you wouldn't believe.
Yep. That's what I was playing the same. I had Ibanez 5-string through a database. That's what I was using at the time too. I don't remember the model. It was a Sound Gear something. I can't remember what the model was, but you're right. I mean, that database, oh my God, it was so loud, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, years ago when I first started out, believe it or not, I'm in 1965, I was working at Silverman's Music. It was my first real job.
Where was that at now?
That was right at the corner of Barrington and Salter.
Okay.
And I was working there, and the very first Beetle bass came in to that store, very first one in the Maritimes. And I bought it the day it came in. So I was using that in a Fender Bassman and used that right up on through until I was with the Marquis. And we were playing one night at the Ottawa House in Hull, Quebec. And we used to do, in the comedy version of that show, we used to do Yellow Submarine by the Beatles.
Okay.
And you know how that starts, right? In the town, thud, where I was born. Okay? Well, the girl in the band used to turn around and pretend to hit the bass, but she was too close and she hit it right where the neck joins the body, and it's just glued on. Snapped the thing right off.
Oh, wow.
I don't have a second bass, so I'm sitting there in Ottawa, and we still have, this is halfway through the night. So the guitar player, Steve, said, well, I happen to know somebody that's getting out of the business, and he's a bass player, and he's selling his gear. And I said, well, tell him to get over here right away. I said, whatever he's got out, even if I don't want to buy it, I want to rent it until I can find something. Well, this was 1966, and he showed up with a 1964 Rickenbacker.
Oh.
$250.
Do you still have it? I will give it $251 for today.
Unfortunately, I sold it. Man. I wish I still had it. It'd be worth a ton of money.
Oh.
But anyway, that's what I was playing for a while, and because it was a stereo Rickenbacker, when I joined Everyday People, not right away, but later on when I could afford it, I had a oh my God, I cannot think of the name of that amplifier right off the top of my head, the one that I used for the bass pickup. But I had a Trainer monoblock 100-watt head, okay, and an Ampeg 810 bottom for the treble pickup. No, I can't think of the name. Bruce Dixon bought it from me.
Okay. He's probably still got it.
Yeah. It had a reflexed 18 in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, backwards 18. But anyway, I was running the thing stereo, and wow, what a sound. What a sound. And then I wound up, Trainer was coming out with a new line of product, and they asked me, as one of 10 bass players in Canada, to take a certain setup and play it for a month and give them feedback on any problems I found with it. Mm-hmm. Pardon me. So I had it out on the road for a month, and the only problem I found was that they were twin 15s, 2 cabinets, twin 15s, and the separator plate between the speakers wasn't fastened properly, so you would get vibration out of it.
Right.
And that's the only problem I found, and they said, well, that's great. It's yours. So I played that for a while.
Wow. Free shit.
Yeah.
So you didn't go the traditional Ampeg route. Well, here's the question. Now, those original Trainers back then, would they have been tube amps or solid state?
I beg your pardon?
Were they tube amps or were they just solid state amps?
No, the first ones that came out were tube.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was what I had, what you just mentioned. The Ampeg
Yeah. Okay.
was an Ampeg with no, it wasn't. It was an acoustic 370.
Okay.
Acoustic 370.
Okay.
Anyway, call Bruce and ask him. He bought it from me.
Okay. So you went from that Hoffer to Broken 2. You got the Rickenbacker. You played that for a while. Did you keep that all through like this, in 60s into 70s or?
No, that got stolen.
Oh.
That first one got stolen. And I wound up playing a Fender Jazz for a while.
Okay.
And then when Everyday People broke up, Bruce and I moved back down here and formed Molly. Well, yeah, I guess I don't think that any one of us really formed it. It was myself and Bruce, and it was Tim Garrigan and Bob Quinn from Pepper Tree, because they had broken up, and that was the original Molly Oliver. And when we were down here for a while, walked into a music stop one day, and they had a black Rickenbacker hanging on the wall. So I bought it. Went back to that and played that for a while, and basically got out of music for a few years. I had been separated, and my wife and son, ex-wife and son, were living in Ontario, and he was having some problems. So I sold all my gear and went up there to try and help out. So I was out of music for a while until I joined this orchestra up there, this 15-piece orchestra. And then I got out of that, came back down here and didn't play for a little while again. I'm sorry. While I was with this orchestra, I bought my first 5-string, which was the Ibanez Axe Star.
Okay, Axe Star. What year was that?
I came back in 97, so it would have been about 95 that I bought that one.
Okay.
It's a half-size body. It's almost like a Steinberger, except that it looks like a real guitar.
Okay.
Headless, tuned at the back, and played that for a while. But I found that the spacing between the strings, my muscle memory was made for larger guitars.
Right.
And the spacing between the strings, not so much for my left hand, but for my right, I'd find myself jumping to a string and a half. So I was missing things. So I got rid of that. I'm sorry, I didn't get rid of it. I had it. I brought it down here, and I went over to see Dave and Dave at the Hub one day, watched them play for a little while, and then I said, maybe I'll start playing again. So I gave Dave my guitar and said, it's been sitting in a case for 5 years. Fix it up. So he did. And I went back to pick it up, and he said, you're not getting it back unless you get up and play. And that started it all over again.
Dave Glant?
Dave Glant, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That started it all over again.
Wow.
And
See, for me personally, like, it's funny, I'm listening to your talks, like, wow, it sounds a lot like me. I got these little fucking hands, you see, and I couldn't play a Fender Precision because I just couldn't hit them. I couldn't reach it. And so the Ibanez for me was perfect. The Ibanez Roadstar is what I started with, the Roadstar 2. And then I went to that Ibanez 5-string, whatever it was, probably a 505. And then it was stolen from me. So I got another one. And then I wanted to try something else. And I sold that one and I was walking out this door and he said, you should try this Fender Jazz. I can't play a Fender guitar. It's just too big, right? But the Fender Jazz was perfect for me. And I still have that guitar. I love that guitar. It's my favorite guitar. Actually, funny, I just trying to tell you, I just bought an 87 Ibanez Roadstar, and it's made in Japan. What a fun guitar. It's just, again, small little neck, and it's just so fast. It's a fast neck. I love it a lot, right? But I've always wanted a Rickenbacker. I always wanted to try. Do you ever try Ernie Ball stuff at all? The Music Man?
Yeah, not real fussy about the neck on them. I find it a little wide for me.
Okay.
You're right about the precision, though. I could not get around that. I used to fall short of the E string and actually push it off the neck of the guitar.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, except for the Fender Jazz, I didn't find any of them were any good. I don't mind the neck on the Godan.
Okay.
That's kind of nice, but they don't make a 5-string, so.
Right. Okay,
It's interesting. It's interesting you're talking about necks because I was reading a story. Obviously, Eddie Van Halen passed away last week, and when he had his signature guitar, he designed this guitar, and they handed it to him, and they thought, this is exciting. He starts playing. He goes, this is crap. We spent 6 months, and what it was they figured out he was so used to playing the guitars with the necks all worn out that they actually physically had to take a computer and get a laser read on where all the nicks and everything was, recreate that. They did it. They handed it to him, and he's like, that was beautiful. So his first guitar was actually, the neck was a recreation of those old guitars that he used to play. I thought that was fascinating because I'm very much a feel guy myself. If cymbals aren't the right way or sticks feel weird, and you don't realize it. Something that's old and beat up and yucky, look at it, could be the best thing ever.
Oh, for sure. Look at Willie Nelson.
Right. You mean his guitar, right? You mean his guitar.
Yeah, but no, you're right. It is that way. It's funny because I've been in places where people have said, well, come on up and jam. And I look at the bass and I just know that it's just not going to feel right. I'm not going to be, I do get up and play, but I know automatically that it's just not going to feel right for me. And I'm going to have to work. When I'm playing, probably 90% of the night, I never look at my neck. Doesn't matter what the song is. Doesn't matter how far it goes, up, down, doesn't matter. I have that muscle memory for this guitar that I can do that. There are some things I do have to look for, but getting up on the stage with someone else's guitar, I have to constantly be looking what I'm doing because the frets might be just a little bit wider, the neck's a little bit wider, a little bit thicker, and that throws off your muscle memory.
Yep.
So I know exactly what you're saying. It's got to feel good for you or it's not going to work for you.
What about positioning now? Like, where do you hold your guitar? Like, because I know Bruce has got his super high, and mine's, I don't know, I'm probably higher than the average person. I can't be like the Slash from Guns N' Roses, like that kind of guy playing that low. I can't do that. Now, I don't know where you keep your guitar.
You have the Ibanez?
The Ibanez in the Fender Jazz, yeah.
Okay. The horn on it?
Yep.
It's about here on me.
Yep. About the same.
Yeah, it's quite high. Somebody asked me,
Holly Ghost.
somebody asked me one time why I wore the guitar so high. And I said, well, for me, it's quite simple. If I wear it lower, I have a lot of arm movement to get to the strings up and down and so on.
Yep.
Where I wear my guitar and the angle I have it at, I'm resting my forearm on the top of the guitar. And I'm just using my fingers.
Yep.
I very seldom have to take that arm off to do something. It just rests on the guitar and my fingers do all the work, not my whole arm. And I found that most comfortable. Now with the Rickenbacker, that was almost a problem because the way I like to wear it that high, the horn on the Rickenbacker is even more pronounced.
Yeah.
Oh, right under my chin.
Yeah.
It was right under my chin. And sometimes I used to turn it. Sometimes I used to turn it just for the heck of it. I turn it and play it like an upright.
So you've used this PV database since 92. Before that, you were using Trainer stuff. Is that right? Or what was in between? Anything?
Well, I used Trainer and I used Ampeg.
Oh, you did have Ampeg. That acoustic amp too.
Yeah, D810 bottom. Yeah, which I hated. Took 4 people to carry it.
Mm-hmm. See, I remember watching Tim Hewitt play in Razor Boy back in the late 80s. And he had this sound from that Spectre bass he's using, but he had Tracy Elliott and Harkey cabinets. And the sound, since I started playing bass probably about 20 odd years ago, because I was like yourself, a keyboard player first, I wanted to emulate that sound. And I'm close now. I have a Gens Benz amp and I have this SWR Workman that I use stereo, and it's kind of a cool sound now. But he had this sound that it was so perfect. It was just punchy and real, but bottom end was there too. It's just you didn't like that stuff in the 80s, the Tracy Elliott stuff that never got your attention, or no?
No, not when I was going through all of that.
No.
That stuff was considered new and unproven.
Fair enough.
So you stuck with what you had if you liked what you had. Now today, if I was to go and do something else, I would probably go to a GK.
Yeah.
I've tried them a couple of times. If I was to move to anything else, it would probably be that, or the mini Ampegs that are out there.
So let's back the truck up just quickly. So you talked about that amp, and you said it took 4 people to carry it.
Yeah, the Ampeg 810 bottom. Two
Yes.
people could, but it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Were you one of the 4 people that carried it? And I tell you, here's why I'm asking you. Dave knows.
Oh my God! Why do you keep doing this?
Seriously, no, it's not directed at any one person, but bass players used to carry gear at some point in time. I don't know when that changed.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. All through Everyday People and Molly Oliver, I drove the transportation most of the time, whether it was Everyday People school bus or Molly Oliver's 5-ton truck, which I bought, right? I drove the transportation, and the roadies, well, the 2 roadies that we had came with me.
Right.
So I was there. So I was always the 3rd roadie. So I did the driving, I did the setup, I played, and I did the teardown. Did all of that through all of those bands for 11 years.
But Pammy would have had a feel, or like a real Fender Rhodes. She was playing a Fender Rhodes piano. That was a full-size piano too, right?
Yep.
And in that time, you would have folks with the real Hammond C3 or B3 organs too. I mean, that shit was heavy as fuck.
Hammond and Everyday People, it was a Hammond B3 with 2 Leslies.
Oh.
One on each side of the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually took that bugger. I hated lifting that because it's so top heavy in its natural frame. I actually took that bugger and chopped the legs off of it and rewired the whole thing with a connector and steel pins going down from the top into the legs so that we could take it apart and just carry the top.
It'd be like 2 butterfly cabinets, Sean. That's what it'd be like. One of those.
I'm just thinking, you know what? I'm just going to leave it here and get something else at the next gig. That's kind of like, that's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Man, oh man.
So, where do we go from here, gentlemen?
Well, tell us what you're doing now, Carson. Like what's Carson Richards up to today? I love him. I fucking love him. But like, what's where can people see you? Where can people read about you? Is there stuff that people can download, or do you have anything for sale?
I don't personally. I think Bruce Wheaton still has some things that we did the what was it called? It was a rock concert at the Forum, and it was featuring all the recording acts from the 70s and 80s out of the Maritimes. Yeah. And it was Soma and Ram and Oakley and Everyday People and Molly Oliver, Snake Eye, all those bands. Yeah. And we did that rock concert, and Bruce had put together CDs of both Everyday People and Molly Oliver. And Everyday People has, I think, 3 or 4 songs that were recorded but never released, and they would be on those CDs. So that's about it that's out there right now that I'd be playing on. As far as playing, obviously with the COVID thing, that's gone down to zip, really.
Yeah.
But as I was saying to Dave, and when we were talking before the show, I'm playing with Sam Moon if he ever does his 5-piece again. I've been his bass player now for about 6 or 7 years. Had been his bass player in the early 80s for about 1.5 years. I replaced Pat Riley when he left.
Right. And
I'm playing with Michelle Ryder and Ryder Blues Band, which is just phenomenal. She's I'm just honored to be on the same stage with her and Rob Gooding. I mean, beautiful people, and just love playing the music. Just love playing the music. And I'm with a gentleman by the name of Wayne Sponicle, who a lot of people will not have heard of. He only started playing, I think, when he was about 45. And he has probably 125 or 135 original tunes. And we're just getting set to go into the studio, I'm hoping before the end of October, to record his second album.
All different genres now, too. Carson was telling me earlier, Sean. So he's got everything from blues to funk to rock to all over the place, eh?
Yep, Celtic rock.
Yep.
Well, a song that sounds like Celtic rock. But yeah, he's very eclectic. He's not one of these songwriters that has everything that he wants to hear in mind.
Right.
He comes in with the lyrics and the basic chords. He hands it off to the band, and we basically do the musical arranging for him. As I said, he only started playing when he was about 45.
Right.
He's not a monster player, but he's one hell of a songwriter.
Nice. And he's the
Well,
singer,
you know what?
too, I presume.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
Sean?
and often, well, you just said, a hell of a songwriter. And for me, that's where a lot of it starts. I mean, if you can play a gazillion notes and you can't write a song, I mean, good for you. But, it all starts with the songs, right?
Yeah, well, that's basically where I'm at. I mean, I think all of my talent and original material is being able to have someone come with that product that they have and say, this is what I would like to hear. I want this to be a rock song, or I want this to be a blues song, or I want it to be funky. And then I can write 3, 4, 5 lines for that song. And then they can say, okay, I like this part. I like that part. Let's put this together. They hear what they imagined for their song, but I get the chance to write all of those bass lines. And it's something I've always loved to do. Couldn't write a song to save my life, but I love writing bass lines to songs, giving people choices of what they would like to hear, and sometimes surprising them.
Right.
Well, I mean, I spent a lot of time restudying Eddie Van Halen after his passing this week, and he had a saying that he used over and over again, if you could believe that man couldn't read music. And his line was, if it sounds good, it is good. End of story.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't think you should sell yourself short. You're definitely writing songs and you're writing music, and it's musical. So
That's right.
Yeah. You fellas remember Bill McCauley? Was
Yep.
the
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yeah. He was the same way.
Didn't read.
As beautifully as he played, it was all by ear.
Wow.
Could not read. I think eventually he went and took lessons and learned how to read. But when he was in Red Eye in New Brunswick, and when he was in Oakley, it was all done by ear.
Wow.
There's a certain discipline that I can appreciate. I mean, I can read a bit. I don't profess to be a master, but there's a certain proficiency that I certainly respect. But there's also a certain skill set that if you don't read and you're playing music and you're listening by ear and you're playing by ear, that I would say the person that plays like that doesn't understand the reader, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Fair statement.
I missed the middle of it. The person that
the person that doesn't read probably doesn't understand the person that plays by ear, and vice versa. Like there's kind of like a little bit of a gap there where the two of them don't understand what the other one does.
A disconnect.
Yep, for sure. I can give you a quick little story on that if you got a second.
Sure.
Absolutely.
When Everyday People was together, we were recording at Toronto Sound, which was Doug Riley and Terry Brown. And I got called in one day to do a commercial for Du Maurier cigarettes. And I went in, and it was Doug Riley, myself, Bruce was called in as well, Bruce Wheaton, to play guitar. And what was in it? Steve Young playing sax, Barry Tallman on trombone, Bruce Cassidy on trumpet, and 6 players from the Toronto Symphony. So we went in, and the music was put in front of us, and we ran through it 5 or 6 or 7 times until Doug was happy pretty much with it. He said, take a break. When we come back, we're going to record. So we took a break, and while we were out in the hall, Doug walked up to me and he said, watch what happens when we go back in. And I said, what do you mean? He said, just watch what happens. So he called us all back, and he said, we got to get this done really fast. Come on, let's go. So we all sat down. Boom, we're off. We're starting to play. Nobody's playing from the symphony. He had taken their sheet music. They didn't even know what key it was in, and the rest of us were just playing it.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, they couldn't understand how we could do that, and I couldn't understand how they couldn't remember what they just played.
Right.
Yeah.
And nobody's right, nobody's wrong. But I kind of err on your side of the equation in that could I go in and play with the Stad band? Probably not. Don't sight read well enough to do that. Might be able to fumble my way through it, or the band at Rebecca Cohen. But I think there's just, for me, it's just a lot more fun and a lot more interesting to play than sit there and turn pages while you're trying to play. That's just me personally, right?
Yeah. I've had people comment on players that are way up in that area of symphony. I actually have a niece who's an incredible piano player, as well as an incredible violin player. She works in Ottawa. She's the pianist for a couple of choirs, and she's right into it, very much right into it. And I lost my train of thought.
We're talking about turning pages and yeah.
Yes, I sometimes wonder. I've never talked to her about it, but I sometimes wonder. I mean, she's playing away, and she either has to, turn the page, or she has someone there turning pages for her if it's too complicated. And I'm wondering how much she's enjoying the music when she has into that thing. Okay, coming up, change a page. Whereas what we do, as far as I'm concerned, what we do is a lot more fun, because it's coming out from inside of you. It's not coming off the paper.
It's interpretive, right? I think if you're playing by ear, you're interpreting what you hear. It may not be exactly bang on. It may not be published on print, but it's interpretive. It's the way you feel with that song. So whether right or wrong, who gives a rat's ass, really?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Carson, I just want to tell you this, man. Like, it's just been, from my behalf, and I know on Sean's too. Now, I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of Carson Richards, and to have you here talk with us tonight, it's just been a pleasure and a treat. It's been an honor, to be honest. So thank you very much for doing it. I'm sorry, Sean, you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say, you said you were 73. Is that right?
Almost 73 and a half.
Well, and I tell you, brother, if I'm lucky to ever get the 73 and I look half as good as you do at that age, holy smokes, because you don't look, and 73 is still young, but I mean, you look vibrant, you look witty.
My fucking beard is whiter than his.
Well, you just look like you could, jump up out of that seat and go toe to toe with both of these two guys that are sitting here talking to you. So whatever you're doing, sir, it's working for you.
Well, I
cocktails every night. Didn't you hear him? Cocktails every night.
Don't put me between you two.
No, it's not a good place to be, Carson.
No, it's an ugly spot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Imagine. No, I appreciate the invite to do this. It's been a pleasure talking about it. Don't get to talk to a lot of people in this depth about this. Most of the people that I know are not musical, and it's kind of hard to explain these things. If you've never stepped foot on a stage, you will never understand how I feel when I do.
Amen, brother. They don't get it. It's almost like a secret language that we have that people don't. If they don't get it, they don't know it, and they can't speak it.
And quite honestly,
I love the people when you're at a gig that come up and say, "Can you play such and such?" And you say, "No, I'm sorry." And I say, "Well, you heard it on the radio, right?" "Yeah." "Well, why can't you play it?" They just don't know. They don't know how many hours you put in.
No.
And we talk about that a lot, right? It's like if somebody says, we're going to pay you $3,000 for a one-nighter. Well, that's an awful lot of money. Well, no, it's not. It represents X amount of time all these people in the band took to figure out what the hell they're doing. That's what you're getting. You're not getting that night. You're getting all that experience.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Here, quick little one. Somebody called up and said they wanted a band for a wedding. Going to be from 8 till 1 in the morning. What do you charge? And the guy said $4,000. And he said, $4,000, that's an awful lot. And Buddy said, tell you what, call up 6 plumbers, have them come over there and work from 8 to 1 in the morning. We'll work for half of what they get.
Right on, brother. That's it.
Well, I'll tell you my one wedding story. Did a wedding in Antigonish, and we played for about $2,000. It was a lot of fun. And ran into the guy about 10 months later, and he was with a different girl at the grocery store. And so I said, how's it going? He goes, well, obviously not so good. I'm not with the girl that I married. I looked at him. I said, well, you're not getting your money back. So
The next one's $3,000, motherfucker.
that's right. So anyway, this has been an absolute pleasure, sir. I'm glad we finally did this. And hey, you know what? Can't wait to maybe sit down and have a beer with you live.
That's where I was going with the whole thing, because the premise behind the show, Carson, was just like you and I and Sean sitting in a bar, having a beer, having Jameson, having rye, whatever, and talking about what we do, you know. And this is our opportunity to kind of expose it to, you know, John Q public who wants to watch it, you know. And if they get it, great. If they don't, that's okay. I guarantee there's going to be a ton of people who are going to love this interview with you tonight. So thank you so much for doing it. We appreciate it.
And I really appreciate what you two gentlemen are doing. This is really nice. People that I never got to see play or never got to talk to, because I was always playing while they were playing.
Right.
Stories, and I hear them through Barstools and Bandtalk. That's really nice.
Mission accomplished.
Thank you, sir.
We can retire.
That's right.
Carson Richards, thanks so much, brother, from the bottom of our heart. It's been a treat. We're going to get you back on to, like I said, Sean and I were done with this today. It's like, man, it was like there's so many people, so many stories that we missed. But I don't know if people have an hour and a half. I hope they'd spend the whole fucking hour and a half listening to these stories, because they were amazing to us, you know, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and we will get together for that beer and that mug.
Absolutely. You get that right.
All
That's
right.
a whole nother story.
Mugs
Peace,
and
brother.
beer. All right, you take care, man.
Catch you later.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.
Barstools, Bandtalk, the complete Maritime music bucket list.